So I've been talking a lot in my recent few videos about Palpatine, the unknown regions, his observatory, and how that could have tied to his eventual return in The Rise of Skywalker. I just want to sort of put a cap on that today and go a little bit further into that idea, so hopefully you guys can find that interesting. By the way, I'm going to throw some Jedi Survivor gameplay footage on here. A lot of what I'm talking about has never been pictured, so consider spoilers for the game. Don't watch this one if you haven't played it, or just listen to it maybe. Alright, so as you're aware, Palpatine had a series of what were known as observatories built throughout the galaxy. In Star Wars Battlefront 2, you of course visit one on Pilio when you play as Luke. Some observatories seem mostly designed as storehouses, while others have stranger, arcane functions. Let me read from probably the most interesting chapter of the Aftermath series. That's chapter 35 from Empire's End. This is the observatory. It is one of many scattered across the galaxy. All of them are laboratories in a sense, and all of them look beyond the galaxy's margin in different directions. At the same time, each is also its own unique entity. Palpatine began establishing the observatories before the start of the Empire, infusing each with purpose. Some housed ancient Sith artifacts, others hosted powerful weapons, others meant as prisons, harnessing the life forces of those captured. This one, the Jakku Observatory, has its own function. Then, once traveling inside the observatory, Rax finds a room inside containing a computer system. No, these are ancient computational mechanisms from an earlier civilization. From precisely when, Rax cannot say. The Old Republic, the fallen Sith Empire, he knows not and cares little. Above the computers is the projection of a three-dimensional star chart that matches no known map here in the galaxy, which makes sense, given that it does not chart the known galaxy, does it? For decades, these computers have been plotting a journey. Outside the known galaxy is an unexplored infinity, Palpatine explained, one closed off by a labyrinth of solar storms, rogue magnetospheres, black holes, gravity wells, and things far stranger. Any who tried to conquer that maze did not survive. The ships were obliterated or returned to the galaxy devoid of travelers. Communication from those explorers, incomprehensible, either shot through with such static as to make the content useless, or filled with enough inane babble to serve perfectly as a clear sign that the explorer had gone utterly mad. Palpatine had one in the Navy who knew something of the unknown regions, Admiral Thrawn. The text goes on to talk about how Palpatine explored the void, basically using the computer's computations alongside probe droids to slowly map out the unknown regions and beyond. Why? Well, there are a couple of reasons. For one, Palpatine believed that there were galaxies or space beyond the main galaxy that was his for the taking, but he also felt something dark out there. Sorry for so much direct reading, but I do need to read this following quote. The Emperor was convinced that something waited for him out there, some origin of the Force, some dark presence formed of a malevolent substance. He said he could feel the waves of it radiating out now that the way was clear. The Emperor called it a signal, conveniently only one that he could hear. Now, as you might be able to see, this book accidentally is a perfect setup for what would come with Palpatine's rebirth in Episode 9. And although this was presumably meant to be a link to Snoke or something First Order related, this does a great job of tying in to the Sith Eternal cult. So let's summarize. Palpatine starts creating these observatories, and this is something that he starts far before becoming Emperor. He goes to Jakku to start planning that observatory in 30 BBY. That's only 2 years after securing the Chancellorship, so he was working on this early. Palpatine sensed something far beyond and started working on ways to travel through the unknown regions. Of course, as this is happening, we know that outside of known space, cut off from the rest of the galaxy, is the Sith throne world of Exegol. Present on Exegol, other than the many shipyard facilities, was what was known as the Sith Eternal. Now, we don't know a whole lot about these guys, whether they were here before Palpatine was, or even how Palpatine made his way to Exegol, but there's a really good opportunity for them to have been there basically before Palpatine was, for them to have been the source of the dark power. Whether they were or not, I think the planet itself as a beacon to the dark side works either way. The real concern is timing, and that's something that they have to be careful about, because there's an opportunity to make Palpatine's return and the creation of the Sith fleet and everything else less dumb. The Sith fleet of the Zeistans is always going to be stupid, but if it does turn out that Exegol's foundries were of mythical Starforge-like quality and that he was only able to secure them through all this work in creating the observatories, I think that helps make it pay off a little bit more. What's more, the entire book hints at the fact that Palpatine may have survived episode 6 and that the dark force out in the unknown regions may be what was the cause of that, and that did end up being true. I'll read this quote again from the same chapter. This is from Yup Tashu, one of the Emperor's advisors. "I am," Tashu says, turning. His cheeks are wet with tears, his teeth slick with red. "Palpatine lives on. We will find him again out there in the dark. Everything has arranged itself as our master foretold. All things moving toward the great design. The sacrifices have all been made." This isn't like theoretical. Tashu believes that Palpatine is still alive or is in the process of being reborn. Rack says, "The mantle of the dark side is yours to wear, at least for a time, at least until we can find Palpatine and revivify him, bringing his soul back to flesh anew." Now, Rax doesn't believe this, and Tashu is presented in the novel as kind of insane. However, and I talked about this in the last video, Palpatine himself doesn't seem overly concerned about his possible death because the contingency is in effect. Rax is summoned to the second Death Star after Luke's strike team goes to Endor because Palpatine has sensed a shatter point, and the shatter point is basically a being or a thing which can fundamentally change the course of history. The thing is, Palpatine's not really super concerned. He summons Rax to tell him that he might have to become the contingency should Palpatine die, but he doesn't seem overly concerned. And with hindsight, we can explain this. We can say, well, he's not concerned because Palpatine knew that he'd be reborn, that his empire would be burnt down, and that he would have only the best parts back in creating the final order. The last sentence in that chapter is very interesting, and it definitely reinforces what I've been talking about. "Are you prepared to become the contingency should it come to that? I know, and I am ready. Then go. Time is precious. A battle will soon be upon us. You will win it, most assuredly." Another vicious smile. "One way or another, I will." This is Palpatine realizing that even if he dies, he set himself up to succeed through rebirth. This is how they can fix things. They have the lore set up to make Palpatine's return less dumb. Now, this theory is not perfect, or this explanation rather. There's the whole issue of wayfinders. It's always been wayfinders that lead people to Exegol. You can, however, I think, explain that. Either Palpatine found the wayfinder once he reached Exegol, then used it to make travel simpler, or perhaps he made it himself. The mention of strange technology in the observatory, perhaps even belonging to the ancient Sith, I also think works really nicely with this theory. You could even have it so it was that technology and that mapping of the stars which produced the wayfinder. Like, the wayfinder was the thing it spit out when it was finally done its computations. I don't know. Just my thoughts though, my reading of the source material. Like I said, there's a lot that I take issue with in the Aftermath trilogy, but the whole idea of Palpatine's possible survival, the observatories, the contingency is all pretty interesting, I think. But my thoughts, let me know yours below.